The janitor's daughter solved a billion-dollar artificial intelligence crisis in under 3 minutes. But when she saw the CTO's reaction, she realized she had just triggered a chain of events that would either destroy her family forever or change everything they thought they knew about justice in Silicon Valley. Isabella Rodriguez, 18, never imagined that bringing her father his forgotten lunch to the 25th floor of Neuraltech Industries would become the moment that shattered every assumption about genius, prejudice, and power in America's most ruthless industry. As she waited nervously in the gleaming lobby, her eyes were drawn to the massive 85-inch display where dozens of engineers in expensive suits were frantically gesturing at lines of code that seemed to pulse with urgency. The AI model was hemorrhaging money. $50,000 every hour it remained unsolved. "My God," she whispered under her breath, studying the neural network architecture projected on the wall. They're using gradient descent where they should be implementing adversarial training. That's why the model keeps overfitting. The security guard, a middle-aged white man with permanent scowl lines, rolled his eyes dramatically. "Sure, sweetheart. The janitor's kid knows advanced machine learning. What's next? You gonna tell us you invented the internet?" Isabella ignored the sarcasm, but couldn't tear her eyes away from the code. The error was as clear to her as reading a children's book. A simple restructuring of a loss function and implementation of dropout regularization would solve everything in minutes. "Excuse me," she said softly, approaching a group of executives who were walking past with frustrated expressions. "That AI model there, you're using the wrong optimization algorithm. The vanishing gradient problem is what's causing the performance collapse." The silence that followed was absolute. 12 of the most powerful people in Silicon Valley stared at the young Latina girl in a thrift store dress as if she had just claimed to be the Queen of England. Dr. Jennifer Morrison, Neuraltech's chief technology officer, was a 45-year-old woman who had clawed her way to the top of the tech world through sheer ruthlessness. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her gray eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had destroyed careers without losing a single night's sleep. She let out a laugh that sounded like breaking crystal. "Child, do you have any idea how many MIT and Stanford PhDs have been working on this neural network for the past 8 months?" Isabella felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice steady. "I know you've lost $347 million so far because the model crashes every time it encounters novel data patterns outside its training distribution." Dr. Morrison's laughter died instantly. That exact figure had been classified, known only to the board of directors and the core engineering team. "And how the hell would a little cleaning girl know that?" demanded Dr. Richard Chen, the vice president of AI development, approaching with suspicion written across his face. Isabella took a deep breath. Her father, Miguel Rodriguez, had been cleaning these offices for 12 years. During the early morning hours while he worked, she had done her homework in empty conference rooms, unconsciously absorbing technical conversations and glimpsing documents left on desks. But revealing that would expose how her father sometimes bent the rules to let her study in the building and could cost him his job. "Just observation," she replied simply, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Morrison crossed her arms, a cruel smile spreading across her Botoxed face. "All right, little genius. If you think you're so smart, prove it. Fix our AI model that has stumped some of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley." The challenge echoed through the marble lobby like a death sentence. Every eye turned to Isabella, some amused, others clearly expecting to witness an epic humiliation that would provide office gossip for months. What none of them knew was that this young girl had been accepted to Caltech at age 16 with a full scholarship, but had deferred enrollment for 2 years to help support her family after her mother's cancer diagnosis. While her classmates were at prom, Isabella had been teaching herself advanced machine learning through free online courses and textbooks borrowed from the public library. Isabella looked at the massive screen, then at the expectant faces surrounding her. Something flickered in her dark eyes. Not fear, but a quiet determination that made some of the executives shift uncomfortably. All right, she said, pulling a scratched Android phone from her backpack. But when I solve this, I want everyone here to remember that you judge someone's intelligence based on their father's job and their family's income. If this story of prejudice and hidden genius has captured your attention, don't forget to subscribe to see how a moment of humiliation becomes the catalyst for a revolution that will shake Silicon Valley to its core. Dr. Chen laughed so hard it echoed off the glass walls. This is going to be better than reality TV. Someone start recording when she crashes and burns. Isabella watched as employees began emerging from elevators and offices, drawn by the commotion. Word had spread through the building's Slack channels. The janitor's daughter was claiming she could solve the AI crisis that had cost hundreds of millions. 20 minutes, Dr. Morrison declared, consulting her $50,000 Patek Philippe watch. If you can't improve our model's accuracy by even 5%, I want you and your father out of this building permanently. No more night shifts, no more charity cases. Isabella's blood turned to ice. How did Dr. Morrison know about her father's work schedule? Oh, yes. The CTO continued with a venomous smile that revealed perfectly white veneers. Miguel Rodriguez, our night janitor for the past 12 years. Hardworking man, I'll give him that. But perhaps it's time we restructured our custodial staff, especially if they're raising children who think they can waltz in here and embarrass our engineering team. The humiliation burned in Isabella's chest like acid. Her father had sacrificed everything for this job, working 3 cleaning contracts to pay for her mother's chemotherapy, spending his nights scrubbing floors so that Isabella could attend the good public school in the district, never complaining even when Isabella studied in the building's empty rooms because their apartment was too small and noisy. Problem, sweetie? Dr. Morrison asked, noticing the tears forming in Isabella's eyes. Still want to play computer scientist? Isabella closed her eyes and remembered her mother's words from the hospital bed just before she passed away 6 months ago. Mia, when they try to break you down, it's because they're terrified of what you might build up. You can start timing me now, Isabella said, approaching the workstation with trembling hands. The security guard immediately began live streaming on his personal Instagram account. Y'all are not going to believe this. Some kid thinks she's going to show up Google's AI team. Isabella ignored the phones being raised around her and focused on the screen. The neural network was even more complex than she had imagined from across the room. Layers upon layers of poorly optimized parameters, like a skyscraper built without proper engineering calculations. But her self-trained eyes, forged by countless nights studying machine learning papers by lamplight in the public library, identified the core problems immediately. As she began typing, memories flooded back. All the time she had been underestimated at school, where guidance counselors suggested she consider more realistic career paths. The college interview where the admissions officer questioned whether she really understood the coursework she'd be taking. Her decision to defer Caltech when everyone told her she was throwing away her only chance to escape poverty. 15 minutes left, Dr. Morrison announced, clearly enjoying what she expected to be an approaching disaster. Dr. Chen moved closer, watching the code Isabella was writing. His confident expression began to shift to confusion, then something approaching concern. Wait, that algorithm structure, that's not possible. Isabella had completely restructured the neural network architecture in less than 12 minutes. Where there had been 847 lines of inefficient code, there were now 156 elegant, optimized lines that seemed to pulse with mathematical beauty. What exactly are you doing? Asked a curly-haired engineer, his previous mockery replaced by genuine curiosity. I'm treating the AI like I would treat our family budget, Isabella replied without taking her eyes off the screen. When you have very little, you learn to make every piece count. I'm removing everything wasteful and optimizing what's essential. Dr. Morrison approached, her smile beginning to crack like old paint. That's impossible. Our best machine learning engineers have been working on this problem for 8 months. Maybe the problem wasn't the engineers, Isabella said quietly, but the perspective. When you've never had to make $50 last 2 weeks, it's hard to understand true efficiency. The tension in the lobby was suffocating. Employees pressed against the glass walls of conference rooms, watching through smartphones as something unprecedented unfolded before their eyes. 5 minutes, Dr. Morrison muttered, but her voice had lost its previous confidence. Isabella finished the final lines of code and stepped back from the workstation. Done. You can run the training sequence now. Dr. Chin hesitated, then initiated the AI model test. The screen exploded with cascading data, neural pathways lighting up like a digital fireworks display, and then complete silence. The AI had processed 2.3 million data points in 47 seconds. Zero errors, zero crashes, 94.7% accuracy on previously unseen data. That's not mathematically possible, someone whispered from the crowd. Isabella looked directly at Dr. Morrison, her young voice carrying a strength that made the CTO take an involuntary step backward. 92% improvement in model accuracy, 89% reduction in computational cost. Your cloud computing expenses should drop by $12 million annually. The lobby was dead silent except for the soft hum of air conditioning. The security guard had stopped live streaming, his mouth hanging open. Even the arrogant receptionist seemed to have forgotten how to speak. Dr. Morrison's hands were shaking with rage and humiliation. That was luck, a fluke. You copied that solution from somewhere. I can rebuild it from scratch if you'd like, Isabella offered calmly. Or I can explain every single line of code to your engineering team. Maybe even teach them a few things about optimization theory. That was when Dr. Morrison made the biggest mistake of her career. Completely losing her composure, she screamed for the entire building to hear, "I will not be humiliated by some wet-back janitor's brat. Shit off of security. Get this little illegal out of my building." The silence that followed was deafening. 47 smartphones had captured those words. The racism and classism that Dr. Morrison had carefully disguised for years had just exploded in ultra-high definition, ready to be uploaded to every social media platform on Earth. Isabella stood motionless, a barely perceptible smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She had accomplished exactly what she needed to. Not only had she solved the technical problem, but she had exposed the true character of the woman who ran Neuraltech's AI division. Interesting, said Isabella, calmly shouldering her backpack. Because under federal employment law, racial discrimination and creating a hostile work environment are serious crimes. And considering that approximately 50 people filmed this, I'd say you've provided quite compelling evidence. Each additional word that came out of Dr. Morrison's mouth only dug her deeper into the grave of her own making, while Isabella stood there with the calm dignity of someone who had just turned a moment of intended humiliation into the opening move of a much more sophisticated game that was only beginning. Dr. Morrison's racist words were still echoing through Neuraltech's corridors when Isabella quietly exited the building 23 minutes later. She found her father, Miguel Rodriguez, preparing their simple dinner in the tiny two-bedroom apartment they had shared since her mother's death. The walls were covered with her coding certificates, math awards, and a photo of her acceptance letter to Caltech, the opportunity she had postponed to help keep their family afloat. Miguel looked at his daughter's face and immediately knew something monumental had happened. "Tell me everything, mija," he said, turning off the stove and sitting down at their second-hand kitchen table. Isabella recounted every detail, from the moment she spotted the AI error to Dr. Morrison's racist outburst being filmed by dozens of people. Miguel listened in silence, his weathered hands clenched, his eyes filling with tears of pride and concern. "My daughter," he said finally, his accented English thick with emotion. "Do you understand what you have just done?" "I've probably ruined everything," Isabella whispered. "I've exposed you, exposed our situation, and now." "Now," Miguel interrupted firmly, "you have shown the world who you truly are. And if this woman thinks she can destroy our family after 12 years of me working nights to clean up her company's mistakes, she doesn't know the Rodriguez family. He stood up and walked to their bedroom closet, returning with a dusty shoebox that Isabella had never seen before. Inside were USB drives, photographs, printed emails, and documents. Papa, what is all this? Mija, there are things about neural tech you don't know. Things I've seen during 12 years of working when everyone thinks they're alone. Isabella examined the materials with growing amazement. Discriminatory hiring emails, photos of executives using cocaine in the office bathrooms, evidence of sexual harassment complaints being buried, financial documents showing illegal tax avoidance schemes. You collected all of this? Miguel smiled sadly. When you're invisible to people, they do and say things as if you don't exist. For 12 years, I saw and heard much more than I should have. I kept thinking someday it might be important. The next morning, Isabella received a call that would change everything. Hello, is this Isabella Rodriguez? My name is Maria Santos, and I'm an investigative journalist with Tech Equity today. I saw the video that's gone viral. You have over 800,000 views in less than 24 hours. Isabella hesitated. I'm not sure I want to do interviews. It's not an interview, Maria interrupted. It's a partnership opportunity. I've been investigating discriminatory practices at major tech companies for 3 years. I have sources who've confirmed systematic patterns of racism and sexism at neural tech, but I need insider evidence. Your video was just the catalyst I needed. They met at a small cafe in East San Jose, far from Silicon Valley's glass towers. Maria was a fierce woman in her 40s, with the determined eyes of someone who had spent her career fighting for justice in an industry that preferred to keep its problems hidden. Isabella, that video was just the beginning, Maria explained, spreading out a folder filled with documents. Dr. Morrison has a documented history of discriminating against Hispanic and Black employees, paying women 30% less than men for identical positions, and using her connections to bury sexual harassment complaints. Isabella flipped through the papers, recognizing some names of former employees her father had mentioned over the years. Good people who had been fired for mysterious performance issues shortly after raising concerns about workplace treatment. What do you need from me? Access. Your father has worked there for 12 years. You clearly have extraordinary technical skills. And now Dr. Morrison has made the fatal mistake of publicly underestimating both of you. She'll try to contain the video scandal, but if we can gather additional evidence, we can destroy her completely, Isabella finished, a steely determination replacing the uncertainty in her voice. Meanwhile, in Neuraltech's executive conference room, Dr. Morrison was holding an emergency damage control meeting with the company's legal and public relations teams. The video had exploded across social media. 1.2 million views, 80,000 shares, and climbing rapidly. I want that girl and her father out of our building permanently, she raged, pacing behind the mahogany conference table. And I want our legal team to find a way to discredit her solution. There has to be a flaw somewhere. Dr. Chin, who had remained unusually quiet since witnessing Isabella's demonstration, finally spoke up. Jennifer, maybe we should consider offering the girl a position. She clearly has exceptional talent, and hiring her could help repair our public image. Are you insane? Dr. Morrison exploded. I'm not going to reward some arrogant brat who humiliated me in front of the entire company. Find a way to get rid of both of them, or I'll find people who can. What Dr. Morrison didn't know was that Dr. Chin had discreetly recorded their entire conversation on his phone. Years of watching the CTO's questionable practices had finally reached a breaking point when he witnessed genuine brilliance being rejected due to pure prejudice. That evening, Dr. Chin called the number Maria Santos had provided to Isabella. I have something you both need to hear, he said simply. Over the following days, Isabella's life transformed completely. During the day, she continued helping her father with small cleaning contracts to maintain their cover. But at night, She worked with Maria and now Dr. Chin to systematically document every irregularity at Neuraltech. The evidence they uncovered was staggering. Overpriced AI development contracts awarded to shell companies owned by Dr. Morrison's relatives. A pattern of Latino and Black engineers being passed over for promotions despite superior performance reviews. A scheme where sensitive AI research was being sold to foreign competitors for personal profit. We have enough material to destroy her career and potentially bankrupt the company, Maria said during one of their late-night strategy sessions in Isabella's cramped living room. No, Isabella replied firmly, surprising everyone. We don't want to destroy the company. There are good people there, honest engineers and employees who depend on these jobs for their families. We want something more surgical. Miguel smiled from the kitchen, recognizing the wisdom he had tried to teach his daughter through years of quiet dignity in the face of disrespect. The best revenge isn't bringing your enemy down to your level, Meja. It's rising so high that they become irrelevant looking up at you. Isabella nodded, a plan crystallizing in her mind. Dr. Morrison thinks I'm just an ignorant janitor's daughter. Let's use that arrogance against her. She turned to Maria. You said you have contacts on Neuraltech's board of directors? 3 board members who are growing increasingly concerned about Morrison's leadership. Why? Isabella smiled, a dangerous intelligence flickering in her eyes. Because we're going to give them an alternative they never saw coming. Dr. Morrison wants to humiliate me publicly? Perfect. We'll give her exactly that opportunity. As they planned their counter-strategy, none of them noticed the shadowy figure watching the apartment building from a car across the street. Dr. Morrison had hired a private investigator to monitor the Rodriguez family, certain she would find evidence of illegal activity or immigration status issues. What she didn't realize was that her own paranoia was about to become the final catalyst for her complete destruction. Every desperate move she made only provided more evidence for the comprehensive dossier that was quietly growing against her. Isabella looked at her father, then at Maria and Dr. Chin, who had become unlikely allies in their quest for justice. Are you ready to completely flip the script? They all nodded, understanding that they were about to engage in a battle that would either end their careers or redefine what justice looked like in Silicon Valley's ruthless hierarchy. And sitting in that modest apartment, where Miguel had raised a genius on a janitor's salary, a plan was born that would not only transform their lives but send shockwaves through the entire tech industry. The girl Dr. Morrison had tried to crush was about to become her worst nightmare. And the reversal would be as elegant as it was devastating. 3 weeks later, the Neuraltech boardroom had never hosted a meeting quite like this one. Dr. Morrison had summoned the entire board of directors, major tech journalists, and representatives from Silicon Valley's biggest venture capital firms for what she called a definitive demonstration of leadership and corporate integrity. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Morrison declared, adjusting her $3,000 Hermes blazer, I have brought you here today to witness how we handle disruptive employees and malicious attempts to damage our company's reputation. Isabella entered the room quietly, wearing the same simple dress she had worn 3 weeks earlier. Dr. Morrison's smile was pure predatory satisfaction. Ah, our famous teenage AI expert has arrived, Dr. Morrison announced to the room full of cameras and executives. I hope everyone is recording this because today you're going to witness a lying child get completely exposed. Isabella took the seat indicated to her, noting the strategically positioned cameras throughout the room. Perfect. Exactly as she had planned. Miss Rodriguez, Dr. Morrison began, walking theatrically around the conference table like a prosecutor approaching a convicted criminal. You claimed that you improved our AI system by 92%. Our experts have determined that this was pure luck, an amateur trick that any computer science student could have stumbled upon. Dr. Chin, sitting at the back of the room, exchanged a meaningful glance with Isabella. The plan was unfolding exactly as they had orchestrated. In fact, Dr. Morrison continued, her voice rising with false confidence. We've discovered that you and your father are involved in a criminal conspiracy to steal intellectual property from our company. We have evidence that he photographed confidential documents during his night shifts, and that you've been selling our trade secrets to competitors. A shocked murmur rippled through the room. Isabella remained perfectly calm, but her eyes held an intensity that made several board members shift uncomfortably. That's a very serious accusation, Dr. Morrison, Isabella said quietly. I hope you have solid evidence to support such claims. Of course I do. Dr. Morrison shot back, her composure already beginning to crack. I hired a private investigator who documented everything. Photos of your father in restricted areas. Evidence of you meeting with suspicious individuals who we believe are corporate spies. Isabella nodded slowly, as if considering this information. Interesting. And this private investigator, did he also follow you? Dr. Morrison stopped pacing. What do you mean by that? Isabella calmly removed a tablet from her backpack and connected it to the room's presentation system. Because while your private detective was following my family, Maria Santos from Tech Equity today was investigating something much more interesting. The first image that appeared on the massive screen was a photograph of Dr. Morrison leaving an expensive Palo Alto restaurant with a middle-aged Asian man in an expensive suit. The timestamp showed it was taken just 2 weeks ago. This is Dr. James Liu, Chief AI Researcher at TechCorp Beijing, Isabella explained to the increasingly silent room. Neuraltech's primary competitor in the artificial intelligence market. You were discussing the sale of our proprietary neural network architectures for $25 million. Dr. Morrison's face went white as paper. That's completely fabricated. A deep fake. Isabella clicked to the next slide. This time, the screen filled with an audio recording. Dr. Morrison's unmistakable voice speaking clearly. The deep learning models are worth at least $50 million on the international market. I can deliver the complete source code and training data sets by month's end. My board won't even notice until it's too late. That's been taken completely out of context, Dr. Morrison screamed, but her voice had lost all authority. Context? Isabella smiled for the first time since entering the room. Let's provide some additional context then. The next sequence of slides showed forged employment contracts, emails discussing the systematic exclusion of minority candidates from leadership positions, and photographs of Dr. Morrison and other executives using illegal drugs in the office bathrooms. Exactly the evidence Miguel had carefully collected over 12 years of invisible night work. My God, whispered one of the venture capital representatives. Jennifer, tell me this isn't true. But Isabella wasn't finished. The screen now displayed the complete, unedited recording of her original encounter with Dr. Morrison, including the racist slurs that had been partially censored in some viral video versions. And now, said Isabella, her young voice growing stronger and more confident, the part that really matters to this company's future. The final presentation showed the actual financial impact of implementing Isabella's AI optimization. In 3 weeks, it had saved Neuraltech exactly $89 million in computational costs and increased system efficiency by 340%. The improved AI was now being licensed to companies worldwide, generating $12 million in new revenue streams. All of that, Isabella said, looking directly at Dr. Morrison, was created by a solution developed by an 18-year-old Latina girl whose father spent 12 years cleaning up the mistakes you left behind every night. The silence in the boardroom was suffocating. Dr. Morrison was visibly shaking, sweat beading on her forehead despite the air conditioning. You planned this. You set me up. No, Isabella replied with devastating calm. You set yourself up. I simply documented it with the same attention to detail my father taught me while watching him work honestly for 12 years. At that moment, Maria Santos entered the room, accompanied by 2 FBI agents specializing in corporate fraud. Dr. Jennifer Morrison, you are under arrest for industrial espionage, violations of federal employment discrimination laws, and conspiracy to commit corporate fraud. As Dr. Morrison was handcuffed, she screamed desperately, "This is persecution! You can't do this to me! I built this AI division from nothing!" Isabella stood up, smoothed her simple dress, and looked at the woman who had tried to destroy her family's life. "Dr. Morrison, the difference between us is simple. You used your position to suppress people. I used my intelligence to protect them." As the disgraced CTO was led away, the board chair approached Isabella with a mixture of awe and embarrassment. "Miss Rodriguez, we would like to discuss a position with you. We're in immediate need of a new chief technology officer." Isabella smiled, thinking of her father, who at that moment was probably finishing his afternoon English classes. He had enrolled in community college the day after her viral video broke. "I'll consider it," she said. "But first, I need to check on my father. He's studying for his business degree." The room erupted in nervous laughter, but everyone understood they had witnessed something extraordinary. The girl Dr. Morrison had tried to humiliate had become the architect of the woman's complete downfall, proving that true justice doesn't come from bitter revenge, but from patient intelligence and the courage to expose truth when the moment is exactly right. 8 months later, Isabella Rodriguez walked through the halls of Neuraltech as the youngest chief technology officer in Silicon Valley history. At 19 years old, she led a team of 300 engineers and oversaw AI development contracts worth over $2 billion annually. The irony was lost on no one. The same lobby where she had been humiliated now displayed her portrait on the executive wall, just below the company motto she had personally created. "Innovation has no accent, only excellence." How does it feel to be called the youngest and most revolutionary CTO in tech history? Asked the Wired magazine reporter during the interview for their cover story. Isabella smiled, adjusting the blazer that still felt strange after months of wearing executive attire. "Funny, 8 months ago I was just the janitor's daughter. Apparently, titles change when you save a company from bankruptcy while exposing systemic corruption." Neuraltech's transformation had been nothing short of miraculous. Under Isabella's leadership, the company had not only recovered its lost revenue, but increased its market value by 400%. Her revolutionary AI architectures were being implemented by governments and corporations worldwide, solving problems from climate modeling to medical diagnosis. Miguel Rodriguez, now pursuing his MBA while working as Neuraltech's Director of Facilities Management, a position Isabella had created specifically for him, watched proudly from the front row during his daughter's Innovator of the Year award ceremony. "I never doubted her," he whispered to his new wife, Carmen, whom he had met in his college business ethics class. "I always knew that girl would soar. I just didn't know she would fly so high that even I would need binoculars to see her." Meanwhile, Dr. Jennifer Morrison had become a cautionary tale throughout Silicon Valley. After serving 6 months in federal prison for corporate espionage and discrimination, she was unemployable in the tech industry. Her former colleagues crossed the street to avoid her. Her country club had revoked her membership. Her ex-husband had divorced her and taken custody of their children, citing her moral bankruptcy and court documents. She now worked as a part-time coding instructor at a community college in Bakersfield, living in a studio apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic. The fall from Silicon Valley royalty to complete irrelevance had been as swift as it was absolute. Videos of her arrest still circulated on LinkedIn and Twitter, usually accompanied by comments about karma and the dangers of underestimating people based on their background. Dr. Chen, who had become Isabella's trusted vice president of research, often remarked during team meetings, "I've never seen such a complete transformation." Isabella turned humiliation into innovation, while Morrison turned privilege into prison. During a keynote speech at the Grace Hopper Celebration of Women in Computing, Isabella was asked how she had managed to forgive those who had tried to destroy her. "Forgive?" Isabella laughed. "I didn't forgive her. I just used the energy she gave me more constructively." Dr. Morrison taught me that the best revenge isn't dragging your enemy down to your level. It's rising so high that they become completely irrelevant. The security guard who had mocked her during that first encounter now worked as a part-time Uber driver after being fired for live streaming confidential company meetings. Whenever he saw Isabella's face on tech magazine covers and grocery store checkout lines, he felt a deep pang of regret for how completely he had misread the situation. The conference room where everything began was renovated and transformed into the Isabella Rodriguez Innovation Center, a space dedicated to encouraging employees from all backgrounds to share ideas without fear of judgment or discrimination. On the wall, a platinum plaque bears the phrase Isabella repeated during her first speech as CTO: "The genius you ignored today becomes the revolution you can't stop tomorrow." Isabella maintained her connection to her roots through a weekly routine. Every Saturday morning, she volunteered at the East San Jose Community Center, teaching coding to underprivileged kids who reminded her of herself just 2 years earlier. "To remember where I came from," she explained to curious journalists, "and so that other young people can see that it doesn't matter where you start, it only matters where you're determined to go." Maria Santos, the journalist who had helped expose the corruption, wrote a best-selling book about the case titled "From Janitor's Daughter to Tech CEO: How Truth Demolished an Empire of Lies." The book became required reading in business ethics courses at major universities. 18 months after her initial humiliation, Isabella received an invitation to deliver the commencement address at Caltech, the same university she had deferred to help her family survive. During the Q&A session after her speech, a graduating senior raised her hand. "If you could go back in time, would you change anything about that day at Neuraltech?" Isabella thought for a moment, looking out at the auditorium, filled with brilliant young minds from every conceivable background. "I would change only one thing," she said with a grin. "I would have brought my father his lunch 5 minutes earlier, so I could have had more time to watch Dr. Morrison's face when she realized she had just underestimated the wrong girl." The audience exploded in laughter and sustained applause. Dr. Jennifer Morrison tried to destroy a talented young Latina woman, but instead unwittingly created the legend of Isabella Rodriguez. The former CTO learned the hardest possible way that true revenge isn't getting even for humiliation. It's achieving such overwhelming success that your oppressors spend the rest of their lives wondering how they could have been so catastrophically blind to genius standing right in front of them. Justice isn't always swift, but when it comes for those who abuse their power to crush the dreams of others, it arrives with the precision of perfectly written code and the devastating impact of truth that can no longer be hidden. Isabella Rodriguez didn't just solve a billion-dollar AI problem in 3 minutes. She solved the much bigger problem of how to transform systematic discrimination into systematic change, proving that sometimes the most powerful algorithm is simply refusing to accept the limitations others try to program into your life. If this story of overcoming prejudice and achieving impossible dreams has inspired you, subscribe to our channel to discover more real stories of people who turned injustice into fuel for extraordinary success. Because in a world that too often judges genius by appearance rather than achievement, we all need reminders that brilliance comes in every color, every accent, and every background, and that underestimating someone's potential based on their circumstances isn't just wrong, it's the most expensive mistake you can possibly make.